Welcome to our lecture series, Healing Architecture, which we start today with the first lecture by Thomas Burgle from the Dutch office LIAC Architects. A very warm welcome also to you, Thomas Burgle. We are very much looking forward to your lecture and the following discussion. Our participants from German-speaking countries will have noticed right away. Due to the many responses from abroad, we have jointly decided to conduct our moderation, the lecture and the subsequent discussion in English. We don't want to exclude anyone from this cutting-edge discourse because the idea of humane architecture that makes the experience and behavior of the people concerned the guiding theme of architectural design is relevant everywhere in the world. There is no recipe for human architecture, because humane architecture creates a situation-dependent environment that supports the well-being, health, and activities of all the people affected. People and the environment form a whole, because human architecture creates a situation-dependent environment that supports the well-being, health, and activities of all the people affected. People and the environment form a whole. Body and mind interact with the surrounding space, which influences how we feel, what we think, and what we do. If we neglect this connection, we all pay a price. An environment that works against our fundamental human interests affects our well-being and health, our work performance and motivation, our social relationships, and our quality of life. My name is Axel Buether from the University of Wuppertal and the chair of the German Colour Association. I'm sharing the moderation today with my wonderful colleague, Dr. Alexandra Abel, architectural psychologist at the Bauhaus University Weimar, and two students whom she will now introduce to you personally. Alexandra.
The design of architecture in the context of disease is relevant because it's developed for especially vulnerable people. But it can also raise an awareness for the relevance of architecture for health, well-being, and happiness, and thus for the quality of life itself, beyond disease and impairment. The lecture will present 7 best practice examples as inspirations and as challenges. To anchor these examples in your real lives as students, professionals, and users, their presentation will be combined with a hopefully lively discussion. Over 150 students of the Bauhaus University Weimar are participating in this lecture series. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you. You will be able to join the discussion in the chat as moderators or in the form of an essay. I would also like to welcome all other participants. I invite you to actively contribute to the chat as well. You are welcome to give impulses for the subsequent discussion so we can reach a collaborative exchange. We are looking forward to your diverse involvement and are hoping for a lively response to the best practice examples. Our goal is a dialogue that introduces us all to new perspectives in the field of healing architecture and directs our visions to the future. Besides Professor Dr. Buether and me, Hannah Kruse and Florian Brettner, both studying architecture at the Bauhaus University Weimar, will moderate the discussion today. Now I hand over to Florian for the introduction of Thomas Burgle.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Today's topic is Architects of Happiness. And I would like to introduce you to Thomas Burgle from LIAC Architects and Engineers. LIAC is a firm that emphasizes on design solutions that may take careful consideration of the human users, as well as its meaning for the society as a whole. Our guest, Thomas Burgle is part of LIAC since 2011. He graduated with his diploma at the University of Berlin and later decided to further his studies in the fields of environmental design and renewable energies at the University of East London. Later, he acted as an expert for the government of the Netherlands and consulted them in regards to the change of the building sector towards a more sustainable circular economy. And he will tell us a bit more today about his project at LIAC, the Princess Maximus Center. And without further ado, I'm very excited to pass on the virtual stage to you, Thomas Burgle.
Thank you for the warm welcome. I will take you on the journey we started in 2011 when we got the contract for the Princess Maximus. Now I have to share my screen. Yes, there we go. And I will try to explain in roughly half an hour what is the background for this building, which you can see now, which had quite an impact on the healthcare landscape here in the Netherlands, due to the fact that it's a private initiative, which is quite unusual, and it's the centralization of all the oncologies for children in one institute. But before I do so, I will show you one happy picture of all the staff members of LIAC. And due to the fact that we are unfortunately close to the beach with our office, that's how we are spending our lunches. So that's one of the advantages of being in the Netherlands, at least when it's nice weather. And we have, as our office, we have the motto of Architects of Happiness. And why? It's because we think architecture is just a medium to help people to develop their own needs, to develop their possibilities, and to have a healthy and wealthy surrounding where they can prosper. That's probably also the reason why we mainly work in the field of educational buildings, hospitals, or as we call it here in the Netherlands, social environments. What is Princess Maximus Center for Pediatric Oncology started actually because they realized that there are more or less 600 children per year getting cancer. And 1 of 4 of the children dies. And to accelerate the research and also the treatments and the cure of children, they decided, or some people decided, to concentrate all the research and all the care for the children in one center, in one place, with the idea that if research and care are centered in one building, that the researchers can gain knowledge from the caretakers and the other way around. And the aim is actually to cure every child which comes in, which is quite an aim. That's what they say. We want to cure as many children and adolescents with cancer as possible, as quickly as possible, and do this without compromising their quality of life, which is quite interesting and was quite a big issue during the development of the building, because normally if you build a hospital, you build a part which is for cancer, or you build a part which is for liver diseases. And in this case, we turned it around and we said we will build a building for children, and we want the children to go through the normal steps of development, and as one effect in their life is that they have cancer, but it's not the main thing. So we the aim was to build a surrounding where they can prosper and can develop in the natural way. This is the center, and where it's placed quite strategically. I will show this one probably better on this slide. You see the grayish building here on the left side, which is the also a children's hospital, but from the university. And the orange building on the right side is the Princess Maxima Zentrum für Kinderonkologie. And you already can see we try to get the green as far in the building as possible so that every child, even if it's in the building, gets maximum access of views at least towards green. It was quite a restricted plot where we could build because the municipality didn't want us to build there, and there was no law that normally you couldn't build on the plot to the laws in the Netherlands. So they had to change the law for the building, which was also a challenge to get them to do that. You see here from another side the building from the center, and on the left side the WKZ, as it's called, the children's hospital from the university. I already said it's research and care in one building. So on the left side, you see where the research is, on the right side where the care is. It was quite a puzzle to fit everything in the more than 45,000 square meters in a logical way, and in a way that the logistics of the building reduces the stress of the parents, because that was one of the aims we had. In all the measures we took, we were checking how much stress that those people get from using the building. So what you can see here is one of the floor plans, and in the north, you see the research part, then you see the daycare part on the left, and on the right side, we have the 24/7 care. The research part is strategically placed because in the north there's also a highway, and to reduce the amount of noise for the children, we said, okay, research is mainly laboratories, they're not allowed to open the windows, so we put them as a sound barrier between the highway and the parts where the children stay. And now my computer doesn't want, yeah. You also see here in the facades that it's sort of quite a huge building with these pockets of where you have the wood, and the wood is always the element where people can touch it, where people can come actually. And the facade was inspired by pictures we found from the DNA. So in the first beginning, when we started to build the building, we thought the facade, okay, what do children think about? If you think about a doctor, it's a white coat. And so we put a white coat around the building, and that's something we thought it's not very childlike. And then we found these pictures of the DNA, and that inspired us to give the building much more color. And by wandering around the building, it always changes in colors. You always know exactly where you are because the building is all the time changing. So it's interesting to walk around. And that was also one of the measures that we took, because we thought it would be nice, not only the children gets cancer, but the whole family is actually sick. And we wanted to give the brothers, sisters, grandparents a reason to go outside and wander around the building to experience some fresh air and have some impressions of a building which is continuously changing. And as I said, the wood is always on the inside. So when we have 3 courtyards where you can actually go inside, you can sit there, you have a sports courtyard, you have a sports yard for reading, which is the right one. We have a courtyard for greenery and where the restaurant is. And there you have these wooden facades which were inspired by holiday homes, actually, because all the spaces we thought, well, it's not a nice building to go to, but we want to make it nice. So we thought, what inspiration can we draw from to make it that people think of it differently than, oh, I have to go to the hospital. So that's where the elms from the Swiss Alps came from, that we put all the wood on there. That's the entrance. It's quite wide, and it's already showing also what I said, we wanted to draw green into the building. So here the green is actually also already in the building. And that's what you see when you enter the building. You already see outside again. And that was quite important for us, that you never have the feeling that you're enclosed. You always have the feeling you can look outside. And that was based on the fact that we found research which told us looking into the green helps to recover from illness. And so you always get a view to the outside from wherever you are in the building. Another element here is the little steps in front of the entrance desk. So the children are on eye height with the person behind the desk, which also was something we found very important, that children can be on the same height as the adults, because all the people are talking about them, but we wanted them to talk with them and discuss with them, not only about them. So there are lots of these elements in the building where you can lift up or you have to go down as an adult. Another element, it's less important for the children, but more for the people who take care in the building, was that we introduced a quite interesting staircase to reduce the use of the lift. So that's the staircase you see when you enter, and it actually works that most people take the stairs in this building, and not taking the lift helps you to stay healthy as a professional in a quite stressful surrounding as well. What I already said, it's a family, we wanted to have the stress reduction. So the Princess Maxima Center is also focusing on family-centered care, and the child development is quite important to them. So not only the disease, but the whole development of a child. But how can you do that? And you never do it alone. There are quite lots of parties involved in the project. It's Kopfvoll, it's MEC, it's the TU Delft, lots of research. We did our own desktop research about hospitals and how they work and what is working. We had discussions with interviews with survivors, as they are called here, children who survived cancer. And we had, for example, discussion with a boy, then he was a young adult, who was staying in the hospital for more than 1.5 years, and he had lots of information for us, which we could use. What you see here is, for example, with the TU Delft, we were looking into how can we get children out of bed? Because normally if you go into a hospital, what happens? People see a bed, you go and lie in the bed because that's the main element in the room. But to get healthy, it's quite important to get out of bed. And for children, it's quite important to have sort of peers with them, same age group, so that they can develop normally. So there were special toys developed. This is one of them, where they could invite each other to get out of bed and play together, for example. That's also one of these elements, that we have several spaces in the hospital where, for example, this is the builder's hook, as it's called. This is a huge crane on the left side. They can play for the smaller kids. And on the right side, you see the erker, the element which sticks out of the building, which is actually the teenager lounge. where they can sit there with their back to the hospital and just look into the landscape, do their own stuff. On top of it, there is a parent's balcony. They have their own space where they also could do the same. So they come out of a stressful situation. They will not forget what happens in the building, but they have their own space where they can look into the landscape just to relax for a moment in this stressful situation. This is a picture of one of the laboratories. And for example, we talked to one of the doctors, and he told us the story of a child, and the child came out of the operation room, and afterwards it asked the doctor, "Where is my cancer now?" So he said, it's somewhere, because it will be kept in a freezer. So we decided we make laboratories, but with windows. So now the children can go to the laboratories, they can see what's happening there, they can get explained that, and actually sometimes you see nurses going with children there, explaining there in the laboratory, look, there's your cancer, they are dealing with this and that kind of treatment, they will help you. And that's the interaction we wanted to encourage with the getting together researchers and nurses, doctors. They also have their little coffee corner there where they can meet and discuss stuff. The ward, this is one of the ground floors of one of the ward. And for us, it was very important to have the logistics in a very clear way. So you always, at the end of the corridor, you get daylight. So you never feel trapped. On the right side, you see a nurse working in one of these corners, which were added to the corridors, because we found out that the nurses, they walk probably, if you work in a night shift, you work probably 15 kilometers a night. And to reduce the amount of kilometers they have to walk, we introduced these niches where they can sit and do the administration, so they don't have to go back to the main station every time. And all the time they save is beneficial for the children, because they have more time to spend time with the children. Another element, the orange arrow shows you how we managed to get the daylight in. The red arrow shows you, if you are in one of the patient's rooms, you always have the view to the other patient room if you want, so that the children can see, oh, there's someone I can play with. That's one of the elements, and so that they know there's someone else, same age or a little bit older, a little bit younger, I can connect for age-wise. The blue spots are the parents' rooms, which I will talk about later, because this is actually one of the care units. And what you see is on the left side, that's a patient room where you have a bed, where you have the grayish area on the bottom is the corridor. You have a furniture for the caretaker, then you enter the space, and on the right side you see a little hotel space, which is actually the space for the parents. And you have they can close the door, they can open the door, so the family can stay more or less together without the parents waking up in the morning in a very cranky way because they had to sleep in a chair next to the bed. So when we developed the floor plans, this is actually what you see from the parents' room in the mock-up, because we built mock-ups of all the spaces to test them with a bed. But we also wanted to get children out of bed. So during the day, you can turn the bed and then push it into the corner there, so that the space in the room is much more open and you can play on the ground, because that's what children normally do. And what happens if the child is really sick? Then we can bring in the bed from the parents' room next to the children bed, so that the parents can sleep next to the child. And that's what it looks from the parents' room. You see the bed, you see that we had very low window sills, and that was one of the elements that we introduced, because if you lie in bed, you want to be able to look outside. And if you have a normal windowsill, you will look only against the lower part of the window, but you can't look outside. And now it's a play corner where children can invite friends over, and they have their own area there. You also see that the parents have, or you have a own balcony, so the parents can go outside together with the children, always by the parents' room for the safety reasons. And that's the other side. So if you're in the children's bed, you have the parents' room, you can see what's going on. If you're a teenager, 1/3 of the children who gets cancer is a teenager, 2/3 is below 12 years old. Then you can close yourself off because parents tend to be very careful about their children, and so they don't let the child alone. And then we spoke to doctors who said, yeah, but now you're going outside, parent, and it's time for the child to play with its girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, but have time for its own to really get this normal development, which is so important. And this picture is just, if you look into research, you find out that normal people in hospital, they sleep for around about 15 minutes and then they wake up again because all the strange noises, and it's an unsafe surrounding. So we thought that was also something from the boy who was for 1.5 years in the hospital, who told us, you always have some noises around you. You have the peeps from the infuse pumps and stuff like this. So next to the monitor, you see this little grayish element with all the wires coming out. That's actually just a gap in the wall where they can put the infuse hose through. So the infuse pump can stay during the night outside of the room, which helps. First of all, the children don't get the noise. The nurses don't have to go in there, so the children sleep better. I also already mentioned lots of green in the building, around the building. We introduced elements where they can grow their own food. This is a garden where they can smell, because during the chemotherapy, the smell and taste changes. So it's also about how do you get children to eat in this surrounding. But the green has also the side effect that you recover faster. And on the, you see this little graph which shows how stress reducing green can work for people. And it's a long lasting effect. But I think other people know them more about than we do. But it's just that we try to find all these researchers and incorporate it into a building, translate it into a building. The balconies on the right side, also on the left side, you have these outside spaces, not only for the patients, also for the people who work with there. It's a quite stressful surrounding to work in, because you are confronted with death of quite young children, which is stressful, and we had to take care that they have their own space as well. That's on the right side, that's the entrance. So here you already have the spaces in front, and on the left side, that's again how you go into the landscape, which is an open field and a little bit of a woodland with nice pathway through the hospital. Actually, there's a hiking path from Utrecht towards these castles in the landscape. And the last thing I want to show is the bridge, because there was the necessity to connect the Princess Maxima Zentrum to the WKZ on the left side, because I already said it's strategically placed. The aim was to use the operation theaters and the intensive care of the WKZ for the Princess Maxima, so that they didn't have to build all the facilities. But it made it necessary to connect the two buildings. And in between the two buildings, you have a tram line, you have bus lines, you have routing for the fire brigade. So it was quite a challenge to get a bridge done there at all. And then we measured how long the bridge is. It's more than 160 meters. So you are in the bridge for more than a minute if you go from one part to the other part. And normally it's not at the moment when you are on their best, because you go to the operation theater or you are going to the intensive care. And we thought about how can we make it a joyful experience, even though you are in the stress of knowing that you go to somewhere where you don't want to go. And one of the elements is that we said, okay, you have to give them a space to breathe. That's why in the middle is wider than the rest of the bridge. So you go to part of the bridge and then it gets wider where you can rest, where you get the feeling, oh, space, and then you go to the other part. And the other element was that we said we wanted to introduce color. This is how the bridge is built. It couldn't be built with cranes because there were two hospitals in use. The Princess Maxima was in use already. And there is a connecting bridge at the WKZ, and we had to move our bridge on top of it, and there's only 3 centimeters space in between. If you want to do that with a crane, you have to evacuate both hospitals, which is not possible. So this is how it is placed. That's what it looks like at the moment. So you have these strange element with all the colors, and the color is actually glass color. And that has the effect that when you go from one point in the building to the other point in the building, you travel through a rainbow, you could say. And the effect is quite astonishing because now we were able to create something where children, even if they know they go to the operation theater, they are really keen to go there. They like it because it's an experience, and they have their different color schemes. They have the element where they can, oh, that's nice, and they pass through there, and they have little cars now. And then it's really a challenge. I want to go in a car through this bridge to go to the other side. That's the center part where it's getting much wider, and where it's now the experience of passing through this 1 minute is shorter than if it's just a grayish corridor where you walk through. And that's one of the many elements which helps to reduce stress. So with the means of architecture, with the means of color, with the means of spatial experience, you can reduce the amount of stress people experience in a surrounding like this. And also it helps you to perhaps even find some joy in the horrible experience you have in this building. As one of the members of staff there always says, he's one of the board members, he always says, it's a wonderful building, but you will never want to be there. And then in 2018, this lady came and opened it. She already was the Queen of Holland, but it's still called Princess Maxima, and that's because a little girl always wants to be a princess. They never want to be a queen. That's why it was decided even before she became queen that it always will be called Princess Maxima instead of Queen Maxima. And that was in a nutshell, a long process we experienced by building the Princess Maxima building. Thank you. And now I have to switch off the...
Yes. Thomas Burgle, I thank you very, very much for this highly impressive lecture. It's really a very sensitive project. I'm very sure that there are many questions. But before we open the discussion here, within us, I like to encourage actually our visitors in YouTube to use the chat. So wherever has a question, please use the chat and let us know. And we try to transport these questions to you and try to make you a part of the discussion. Okay, now I give to Hannah Kruse and she will open the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you also from my side, and also thank you to Hans Menzel. We were able to meet with him yesterday. He's the head pediatric radiologist from the University Hospital in Jena. So we were able to learn a little bit about the daily routine in the hospital and of children with cancer. And I would like to start with the first question that is also written in the chat. You said that many different people and different offices and also different researchers were involved in planning this building. And how long did the whole research process take time? How long? And how much did you, in the end, were able to actually implement in the building?
Our process started in 2011. We started building in 2016. There were researchers, for example, Kopfel started much earlier. There research done by TU Delft, who took part in several steps later on. So how long it took? Yeah, more or less. The first ideas for the project were developed in 2006 because it's a private initiative, so it was initiated by parents of children who had the experience of having a child who got cancer, and it was initiated by a foundation who took care of children with cancer. Then they got, they did their own research, and all this research were put into the brief we already got. So it's not, for us, we had, in this time, we had, I think, 2 or 3 students here in the office who did for us research on what is already developed, where can we find information. These 12 hospitals I spoke about on a desktop. We had a catalog established where we said, okay, these are the elements we want to look into. Yeah, so I could say for us it was more or less 2 years probably, but there is all the work going on in front before we started. And you always have, during the design process, every time you start to think, does it help the main aim? Because the main aim is not building a building. The main aim is building something which helps people to get better. And that was always the discussion at the office.
So you were able to manage to implement most of the things that you learned through your researches into the building, or were there in the end many restrictions, maybe also because of money or of rules?
There were restrictions, but we were very, very lucky. First of all, the people who initiated this were really driven people. So my compliments to them, they're really going for it. But also we had television evenings on the national television where we collected money for it. This parents' room were only possible because you have a foundation who founds it. So money-wise, there were restrictions, but we didn't feel them. Let's put it that way. And you had rules.
Nice.
And these rules sometimes helped and sometimes didn't, but you have to find a way around it. And most of them, I think, we could implement in the end. Most of the findings we did, we could implement.
Thank you.
Yeah. I would like to ask another question. I will start with the question from the chat as well. Now, that the building is a couple of years in usage already. Have you received sort of response of the people working there and of the children? How is in the end, because all the research we do and all the research you can do and all the design process in the beginning, in the end, only leads to if it's a great building or not. So how was in the end the response of the users?
The first response was, wow, it doesn't feel like a hospital, which was for me quite a compliment, because that was something we tried to achieve. We also were able to, for example, very, very simple things like we introduced lots of wood in the interior, or bamboo, which is not normally used in hospital interiors at the moment. And so people responded quite well because it feels natural. And we get this back from parents that they say, oh, it's nice to stay there. But at the same time, I spoke to many parents and I asked them, what was your experience in the hospital, and not in the one we built, but the before. And they said, I've never seen the hospital because I was only busy with my child. And that's why clear logistics is so important. They don't have to look for, oh, where do I have to go? Because they are completely occupied with the care for the children. What I now get back is that most of the things work. There was a sort of an idealism that probably that architects could do everything for them, that the parents didn't get aggressive, for example. And these aggressions occur, and it's part of the stress you are in. But we can reduce the stress, so it occurs less often. And if you now talk to people, I spoke to a person who works there 2 weeks ago, and she said it's a nice environment to be there. It's nice to work there, even though it's stressful. So yeah, it's a positive response mostly.
I have a question according to that, or related to that. You said, or you put a big focus on the interaction between the research and the kids, and also the parents and the kids. How did it work now during the pandemic? Like, was there a possibility to separate the infectious and the non-infectious areas? Was there a possibility of separation? Yeah, and how did it work during the past 1.5 or 2 years?
That was and is a struggle for them, because many of these children have a very low, how do you call it? Have low tolerance to diseases because of the medications they get. So they had a protocol that researchers often couldn't go into the building, even the facility managers couldn't go into the building. They even had to make a choice who of the parents is going with the child into the building, just to try to keep the children safe. In normal circumstances, you have all these separations built in. So you have a ward where you have even rooms where they get these radioactive active medicines, which is separated from the rest. They can close off parts of it. They have all these possibilities, but it's a struggle because you want to keep the children in a normal development. And if you close them completely off just because they already get treatment, then the normal development, which is already at risk, gets really a struggle to do that. And if you have to decide which of the parents goes with the child to the hospital and the others have to stay home because they are not allowed inside, you can imagine what kind of decisions that are and how difficult it is to make them.
So were any adjustments made during the process of the practice? And there was also the question in the chat, if there is anything that you would do differently now if you'd planned, also if you knew that before.
there weren't, as far as I know, no adjustments made during the pandemic.
And also besides the pandemic, is there anything in
besides the
general?
pandemic, we are now building the second extension since the opening. So that we have already extended it once. We built a auditorium on it. We built some meeting spaces in it. And now we extend the laboratories because they are quite successful due to the concentration of research. They are quite successful, and now they have more space needed for laboratories. So these are the changes which are made. There are not main changes done in the whole setup of the building. What I would differently, probably I would build the facade a little bit, how do you say, with more openings within the grid, because it's quite random. And that gives a sort of liveliness to the facade. At the same time, it also makes it a little bit less adaptable. That's something I probably would change the next time.
Now, this is a huge clinic. Okay, it's a huge clinic, right? I think it's the largest clinic just for child oncologist or child cancer patients in Europe, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Could you imagine this planned in different countries as well, or this approach having like a huge centralized hospital for children to cure cancer? Or is this something that is quite difficult to achieve if you do not have the proper funding or the support of the hospital and everybody involved?
There's only one example in the world, which is, and that's St. Jude's in the States, which does the same. So this is the biggest one in Europe, but there are only two, so you could say there. And I think the funding is not the problem. It becomes the problem, but in this case, it really was the parents driven, and they decided we want this because we think then we can get more children cured. So they started it, and they had tremendous drive to do it, and that actually made it. And I think they are now, because it was actually a national center for the Netherlands, but they're already thinking about extensions again to get children from all over Europe into the center, because they see it has effect on the chances of surviving cancer. And perhaps it's quite obvious that if you are researching on something and you don't see why, and you don't see the effects it has, what you're researching on, that you get less good results. Because if you see every day the children there, and some of the children are really, really sick, your drive is also stimulated. And I can imagine, not only for cancer, but for other diseases as well, that it helps to have a sort of concentration. And you mustn't forget, the whole Netherlands the surface of the Netherlands is as big as Bavaria. So it was also there already, the discussion, but if we have centralized care for children, the parents have to go there as well. And if you go there, what is the rest of the family? Because it's not, you have brothers, you have sisters, you have family and a social system which has to be maintained at home. And the home can be 200, 300 kilometers further up. So the question is, how far do you go? Is it wishable that, for example, if you have one center for whole Europe, but then parents from Lisbon have to come to in this case, Utrecht. So the whole social system would be disrupted, something you just try to keep intact by building it. So there is as with everything, there's a size where it works, and then there's a moment where you have to say, okay, it's not working anymore.
Which I find interesting, because you already told there is extension made, so clearly it can get bigger. So the size is not yet reached, or is the extension only to the research part?
It's only research at the moment.
All right.
Yes, I have a question too. I think most people, it's my experience, know exactly how a hospital must look like and must function. You even spoke, it must have a white facade and a white symbolic that people know and experience it's a hospital. But then you told us that the people who use this hospital now say, well, it doesn't feel like a hospital, and even it doesn't look like in many parts like a hospital. What do you think? Do we have to find new strategies actually to approach these tasks, to design actually spaces for people with health problems and people who work in these places? Do you think everything from the past is quite nice and we just have to improve a little bit? Or do you think maybe we need a completely new approach, like your approach with 5 years research to these very important tasks?
I think we have it doesn't matter if it's a hospital or school or university, you have to think about the users and not about the building. And where do users benefit from? And if you are sick or not doesn't matter. In the end, it's your development which you want to encourage in the surrounding. We all stay inside buildings 90% of the day. We all live in man-made and man-designed surroundings. So if we as architects do our job good, we will help people in their functioning and in their well-being. If we do our job badly, we can really build obstacles to people. And you see that quite often, that there is a building built because an architect wants to manifest himself, or I don't know what the reason is, or and I always say it's not about the plan, it's about the building, and it's not about the building, and it's about the people who are in the building, and how do they move in a building? How can you make a structure which is intuitively used, where you don't need signs, where you don't need we often joked here in the Netherlands, you have these hospitals and you start at the entrance desk and you have these colored lines on the floor so that you find your way. And that was something we really didn't want to have in the building. We wanted to be able that people in a natural way find their way. That's also the reason for the staircase. There's only one way to get up. There are more ways, but this is the way. You enter, you see, oh, I have to go up. And from there, you immediately see everything. And it helps so much. And
I think I experience your building and your way actually of design as a research project. I think you're not dealing with standards and trying to make the best of it. So I think you're really doing research with your job. What do you think? Could it be a method even to teach architectural students not to just to do the design, or maybe it's better to do a research on people, research on how people behave, research on how people perceive and experience actually space?
I think that's really important. We have here in the office also people who are into, how do you call it? Omgevingspsychologie, the psychology of the space. I don't know how to translate that into English. because I think it's the only way that we can make structures who help people to understand it. For example, one very stupid example, which we just found out a couple of months ago. If you ask two men to develop something, they will sit opposite of each other. If you ask two women to develop something, they will sit next to each other. And we do some offices. And if the first question I now ask, if I do an office for someone, how's the percentage between men and women in your office? Because the space will look different with this knowledge. So you really have to understand who your user is, and you really have to find out how you can make a surrounding which helps them, which is our task. We have a responsibility in that. It's not our responsibility to build a building. It's our responsibility to have beneficial environments.
I have a question. All the architecture is full of happiness and color, but in the context of cancer and children, there must be many moments filled with sorrow and fear and things and sadness and things like that. Do you have spaces for these moments? Which spaces do people need if they are full of aggression, fear, sadness? I don't know. Do they need separation from the other people? Do they like colors in moments like this?
We had lots of discussion about the colors. I'm not very happy with the color scheme which we introduced. Not that which was introduced into the interior, because it was more a branding thing than a color scheme for people. That's my opinion. Because we were trying to find out how children experience color. And from this, we thought the color scheme should be a little bit different, but this hospital wanted to have their branding because they have certain colors in their branding, which they wanted to use, also understandable. But we have spaces. We have a space where people can go if they want to be on their own, like the terrace I showed, but also we have a sort of it's not a chapel because it's not non-religious, but it's a space where you can go back on yourself. We had lots of discussion, what happens if a child dies and one out of 4 dies? How do you take the child out of the hospital? And we have a special entrance for that with a special space where people can say goodbye. Also, not only the parents, but also the caretakers. It's heavy if that happens. And what was interesting for us is also that it happens that some of these children are really, really small when they die, and the parents just carry it outside. At the same time, it's a brightful building, yes, it is, but I always said it's not childish, but it's made for children. And that's something I think we should take in mind, that it's always a child. And these children, even if they're really, really sick, they're still a child who develops in its way and who experiences the world in its way. And we wanted to focus on that rather than on the sadness which goes with it in these cases.
Thank you so much. We have a question in the chat. Which part of the architecture do you like most?
Which part of the architecture?
Which part of the building? I don't know which part. Which is your favorite place inside?
That's a good question. I think if I go there, and then normally we have at the entrance hall we have a small coffee shop just below under the stairs, and there I normally get my coffee, and then I just sit and to experience what's going on. I'm not going on to the wards, not on the one hand because I want to give the children and the parents the privacy, but also it's sometimes really confronting if you go there. And we have these bridge which connects these two U forms, and this is a nice part to be on, because you look into the landscape and you have this views into the surrounding. Probably.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I think we have time for one more question, and someone in the chat asked if you are currently working on another similar project, if there's more in the future to see of you.
I hope so, otherwise I'm out of business. Yeah, no, yeah, we are always working on schools and universities, also in Germany at the moment. We just delivered a university building. It's not about healthcare, but it's about all these topics which we found there and the research we did there. We take it with us. We have these experiences, and now we build something which is, yeah, I think, yeah, you build up on your work, and in this case we managed to make something which is very, very, very intuitive. Even so, the building is really big, but we get the compliment once it was opened, and one of the clients came to me and they said, the first day the students came in and they used it exactly the way we wanted and exactly how we described it. So that's something I'm quite proud of, that we manage more and more to understand how people move in a building, how they use a building, and to incorporate this in a natural way.
Yeah, that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we are almost finished for today. I would like to thank our speaker, Thomas Burgle, very, very much. It was very, very exciting actually to see your lecture and to discuss with you. I would like to thank my colleague, Alexandra Abel, as well as Hannah and Florian, both students from the Bauhaus University Weimar. We hope to see all of you again next week, when we will have Jason Danziger from the architecture office Think Build Architecture Berlin as our guest on the same day of the week at the same time, Wednesday, November the 10th, 6 p.m. All the best and take care.